Yo, yo, yo. What's up, guys? Welcome to another Black Lotus podcast. I am your co-host, Mike Blue.
And your other co-host, Josiah Jacobs.
And today we bring on a very special guest. This brother understands all about African Black history, the whole African diaspora. I bring to you guys Charles Taylor. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing very well. How about you?
Doing pretty good. My friend hit me and was like, "Hey, our friend Charles has a website, and he wanted to come on and talk to us about, just Black history." And I was like, "That's pretty much what we do. We just chop it up about Black society. So, we can't really talk about Black society without mentioning where we come from." So, Charles, man, how you been for the last couple years? I ain't seen you in a minute.
Man, yeah, it's been about 2 years.
Yeah, it's been about 2 years, man.
We saw each other last time in Remnant. So
Yeah.
I mean, I've been pretty good. It's been great finding out a whole lot about history. And so that's basically what um, has manifested itself with this website that I've created. And so that's why I've felt compelled to get a lot of this information that I've been learning out there to the masses, especially to Black people,
Yeah.
so that we can have a better understanding of who we are and where we come from.
Yeah. Facts.
Bro, I love that, bro, because that's kind of the mission that me and Michael is on right now with our podcast, and like definitely a different subgenre of Black people, but at the end of the day, it's all the same, and we all have the same goal. I wanted to ask you, was there like a moment in your life to where you decided like I care about this, I care about Black history a lot, and I really want to help my people learn more about themselves? Was there a specific reason, time or reason, or?
Well, I'd say it started all during the pandemic, of course, in 2020. That was around the time when I started to learn a lot of the stuff that I've compiled into this website. I first heard of a lot of this stuff that I put on there from a YouTube channel by the name of Chronicles of Judah 144. I don't know if you guys have heard of it, but
No.
he was the one who I basically got started learning this stuff from. And so the more and more I listened to his YouTube channel, and the more and more I listened to other platforms of his, such as Patreon, the more I felt compelled to research a lot of the stuff that he was saying in his videos about Black people and about this history that I never knew, and that I'm pretty sure not a whole lot of other Black people, at least Black people in America, have heard about. So that's what compelled me to, like I stated, research and start to buy books, a lot of books that were written a while ago, like the 19th century, about Black history and about where Black people have been in history, such as the Blacks in Europe and the Blacks in Greece, the first Aboriginal Blacks in Rome, etc. And so that was really um, what really got me started on this journey of finding out um, where Black people come from and where our people descend from, rather than just accentuating and emphasizing, a lot of the history that gets propagated in the school system about Blacks being slaves and Blacks being oppressed, an oppressed demographic all throughout history. That, to a degree, is true. A lot of that is true, but a lot of it is just it tells a certain story that doesn't tell the whole story, if that makes sense. So,
Yeah. That makes complete sense. I mean, we've always wondered, you know, what the full story of um, just black men and black women and just black people in general, where we've come from, not only where we come from, but who we are. Where we come from does not mean shit if we don't celebrate the positive sides of it and the triumphs of it. I knew about, we did a podcast, or I did a solo podcast a while back called The Nature of the Threat, and or The True Nature of the Threat, which was kind of me literally, actually it's not even kind of, me literally listening to the song and like explaining what was going on in it. It's called Nature of the Threat by Roscos, and he was talking about like um, where white people come from, and the difference between the white history and the true history of it. Like how Christmas is really a pagan holiday. At least the date itself is a pagan holiday. Um, it's I think it's Saturn's birthday. It's the god.
Saturnalia.
Yeah,
Saturnalia.
yeah, and that's where they used to do very questionable activities, and they stole it away so that Christianity could have some room to grow, I'll say. Um, and then he also talked about the true Thanksgiving. He talked about the island of Cree, and he mentioned a couple other things that have to do with white history. But I noticed with you and the website, your main thing is not to, talk about the effects that white people had on our history, but purely talk about what our history was from a black perspective. And that's very rare that you see that, when it comes to research in the massive society.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I just wanted to bring you on so we could talk about a couple of the facts. What's one of the most craziest things that you've researched and you found out?
The craziest things. Well, all of it was pretty extravagant to me when I first found out about it. So, but the main thing to me was I'll say this: my favorite civilization to research of the Aboriginal Black civilizations that I found out were the ancient Britons, or the people who made up the vast majority of the countries in Europe that we know of today, like Scotland, Ireland, England, Wales, the Czech Republic, Denmark, Switzerland, Sweden, etc. So they were the most interesting to me because, of course, when we think of Europeans, we think of whites with blonde hair, blue eyes, or just whites in general. And to find out that there was not only a ruling caste of blacks in Europe, or of blacks in the British Isles, that actually were the first settlers of the British Isles, but were also um, they were the rulers of the British Isles all the way up well into the 17th century, even into the 18th century. Blacks held a prominent position in the European British Isles. So that to me was the most interesting thing that I found in my research, and I really was captivated by a lot of the things that I was finding out about who the first settlers of Wales and Ireland, England, etc. were, and what their true descendancy, or excuse me, the true ancestry was, because all of the stuff that I talk about on my website has a common link to the Bible. If you read a lot of the things on there, I refer a lot of the civilizations that I talk about on my website back to civilizations in the Bible, such as, of course, the Israelites and the Persians and the Syrians and the Syrians, etc. And it was just very, very revelatory for me to find out that not only are these people not only are these people, so-called blacks that first settled in Europe, but they were actually descended from the Israelites that are mentioned in the Bible, the chosen people of God in the Bible. And so that got me thinking, um, could we possibly be those people?
Yeah.
And could that possibly be our culture? So that to me was the most revelatory and my favorite topic
Yeah,
that I speak about.
that's crazy because only before reading a couple of the pages off your website, I really only understood about the what's it called the Moors. I only knew about the Moors and their effect on Spain and Portugal and France. I believe they were in France. I believe as well. Um, I only understood their effect on those and like famous people who we wouldn't have known were Moors, like Beethoven, and I think there was a black emperor of Rome as well. There's a couple actually, wasn't there?
Lucius Septimius Severus.
Yeah,
Is that possibly what you're talking about?
I think that's what I was talking about. He had a really long name, and I was struggling to pronounce it.
Wait, when did he rule?
uh,
Trying to think. He ruled not during the Byzantine Empire, but during the Roman Empire. That it was like at the very tail end of the Roman Empire that Alexander the Macedonian established.
Okay.
So it was the Roman Empire that oftentimes gets taught in history for, of course, a specific reason. But that's around. It was like around the, I'd say maybe second century AD.
Okay, so it was before Constantine.
Yes, he was way
Okay.
before Constantine.
before
Okay.
Constantine and also like 200 years after Jesus was around. So that's it's very interesting how time works comparatively to the Bible. Um, I'll bring the Bible up the next time we bring you on, but one thing I did want to ask is more about like the African civilizations. What was some like key things that you think that everybody should know about? Um, Not to go too deep into it, but like, um, what are like some topics that you think people should research?
I'd say maybe possibly um, where exactly, like when you say topics, do you mean like
Like
what exact
civilizations,
civilizations should
yes,
they study?
civilizations in eras like I know some of the basic ones is Ghana during the Mansa Musa era and the King of Bubakar II era. Um, Nubia, back when I think it was Queen Makita, and who else? There's a couple other eras.
Wait, I wanted to I had an era that I want to like. What were the African civilizations like in the era around maybe like around ancient Egypt? Like, cause I know there were definitely more civilizations that they don't talk about or don't teach us. So like, are there any significant ones that come off the top of your head?
So when you say Africans, do you mean because that's kind of a nuanced word. Do you mean like Africans as in just black people, or like Africans that resided in like Egypt and like you just stated, or like
Africans that resided outside of Egypt, like other civilizations.
Are you talking? Are you talking about like Africans in like the actual like motherland, like the actual?
In the motherland. In the motherland. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I see. I see. I see.
Because
I see.
There's Africans in the Middle East, which is North Africa, which is pretty much Northeast Africa, Southwest Asia, um, and then there's, as he said, there's Africans all over Europe, um, which me personally have not studied a lot about. I studied, I studied a little bit about the West Coast Africans in Senegal and where some of the people from Nigeria come from. But I have not studied much about the Europeans. But I want to know, because I think that you've done a lot more research than me when it comes to just African history in general. What are some some cultures and eras that you think Black people should uh, study? Just people in general should study.
I'd say So this the civilization that I think is the most essential to study would probably be the ancient Minoans, because the Minoans were they were one of the very first settlers of Europe. I think they were the very first advanced civilization of Europe. And so I would suggest for people to maybe study them and what their origins are, because once again, everything about a lot of these civilizations goes back to the Israelites of the Bible,
Yeah.
and that includes the Minoans, as I had mentioned on my website. They're the descendants of one of the children of Eber, the forefather of the Hebrews. So it's important that people research people like civilizations like the Minoans, really, really older or really, really ancient civilizations like the civilizations in ancient Crete, and then even the ones in ancient Rome, such as the Etruscans or the Villanovans, who were once again descendants of Shem from the Bible by way of the Lydians. So it's just important for people to research more like the older civilizations, I think.
Right. Right. I have a question. What out of all the research that you've compiled, what do you think was the hardest thing to find? Like, was there any research that was like particularly really hard to find?
Well, just trying to corroborate a lot of the statements that I made about these people being black was very, very difficult, because, of course, a lot of the history books that were written about these civilizations and what their true physical characteristics were like are oftentimes not spoken about a lot. So just doing research on books and finding websites even that could corroborate and substantiate a lot of the statements that I made on my website was probably the most difficult thing to do. And then to also find actual depictions of a lot of the people that I was speaking about was also very, very difficult.
Right.
Yeah. It's interesting because from one of my teachers, shout out to Professor Bell, um, he was teaching us about the like, I think I don't remember how high these ice walls were, but they're like pretty much impenetrable, and it trapped a lot of the Caucasians in it, forcing them to, in theory, turn into Neanderthals because of the cold ice, the slimness of their noses, the thinness of their lips. You know, it's getting cold, so their eyes start to turn blue. Their skin turns white because of the lack of vitamin D and sun rays. They start to lose their pigment and melanin, and because it's getting cold, they need to thin out their hair, and it starts to be less coarse, which is the description in itself of what Neanderthals look like. Um, but it was very interesting because after that, then you see white people pop up all over the place in the exact like it's pretty much, if you really think about it, it makes so much sense. You know, like how Caucasians, like after the ice walls went down, how Caucasians went to Asia and they went to India and they went to north north northwest Africa and then all the way to Europe, and you see like the patterns of like how migration happened. It's very interesting how you see that, and then how they just, how the history of it just vanishes. You see, you know what I'm saying? Like a lot of the time when we try to find Black history, we always get gatekeeped somehow, some way, but or deterred to learn from it because um, the way that we've been taught to research is not always the best way to research. Um, so one of the things I would want to ask was like, what books did you read, or what articles um, did you did you read from to accumulate the research that you've done?
Well, an essential book that I found to be very, very interesting, and also very, very copious in terms of the amount of facts that were in there. Where it was a book that I reference a lot on the website by the name of Ancient and Modern Britons, volumes 1 and volumes 2, by a Scottish historian who was a Caucasian, by the way, by the
Wow.
name of David McRitchie. And he was one of the, I don't, I'm not going to say he was one of the first to state that certain civilizations in Europe and even beyond were so-called black, but his book is filled with such a copious amount of information and even evidence that he cites from other historians that either lived at that time or even ancient historians such as Tacitus and Pliny and Herodotus and people of that nature. So that that book, or those two books, Ancient and Modern Britons, volumes 1 and 2, are probably the most essential books that I say are the ones that I use the most. And then also just basically books that were written by historians prior to, I say, the 20th century are the most filled with evidence and the most revelatory books that you can find about actual true history, because the scholars, for whatever reason, before that time period, before the mid to late 1800s going into the 1900s, felt more inclined to tell the truth about history and about true historical narrative for whatever reason. So books like that, trying to think. A lot of the books that I have have long names. So, but another one was called Riddles of Prehistoric Times. I think the author was named James H. Anderson or something like that. And so that was another book that was very revelatory. And that wasn't necessarily even about trying to prove certain people were black. It was just a book that was written about archaic times and archaic civilizations and what life was like during the Stone Age and things of that nature. So books like that that have a certain seal on it too. I mentioned it on my website by the name of Scholar Select. Scholar Select books. Any historical book that has that Scholar Select seal on it is a book that most likely is going to tell a lot of truth about history and what true history was actually like back in ancient civilizations, even preceding those civilizations.
Bro, I think one of the craziest things about everything that you're saying is that this information is so new to me and Michael. I would consider us knowledgeable, and a lot of this stuff is stuff we've never heard before, right? And sometimes a lot of this stuff is hard to believe, you know, and like that programming is so ingrained into not only us.
Your connection. Okay, never mind. I got you back. What did you say again?
Our that programming is so deeply ingrained to us is that like when we hear about ancient Africans and black people and Aborigines, like we a lot. So sometimes like I assume that like you kind of think they're like an outlaw or like it's like crazy. I don't.
Conspiracy theories type shit.
Yeah,
You
it's like
yeah,
conspiracies.
you
It's
feel
like
it.
conspiracies.
Yeah.
But it's true though. Like this stuff is true. Like Michael, I told you about the one dude who I met at the function at the little party, the festival thing.
From
Like he's
Elijah.
like, yeah, so from Eliza, he was like really into Black history. He's kind of like you, Charles. Like he focused more on the Aborigines in Mexico. That was a big focus of his.
Yeah,
And just the intro.
that whole atmosphere, like the Mexican Black Aborigines are crazy because like when I was in class, this is like 2 years ago, they said that the first civilization over there rooted in I think 150,000 BC, where
Right.
the first one over here was I think like 10,000 BC. It was a very large and wide margin of time where there was a whole civilization out here and it was proof of it versus in Africa. And so it made me question, were black people the first original men? But then it got me thinking that if it was that far ago, there was a possibility that black people had either rooted in Africa a lot further back, which I had didn't research, and it turned out that black people did root back a little farther back than that date, and or that they started off in Mexico and moved to Africa, but it turned out that the other was
Wait, I had a question for you, Charles. Like, I know for me personally, I went through like a lot of changes during quarantine, and one thing that really changed was my mind. I started reading a lot more. I read a lot of books. I got very into Black American history, and I had a lot of revelations that made me mad. I'm like, why didn't I know this? Why didn't I know about this author? Why wasn't I told about him? Why am I not told about this dude who actually has the solutions and the answers? So I want to ask you, what was it like for you finding about all this stuff, and you being a knowledgeable dude, and you're like, I thought I knew it before, and now I'm knowing all this. I'm like, take me through that process. Like, what was that like for you?
Well, it was definitely a very very revelatory transformation for me, or transition, I should say, for me, having to now rethink and relearn a lot of the stuff that I've allegedly learned in history.
Right.
It was very very at times it was difficult to accept that these people were actually black, because we're taught that blacks all came from Africa, and that we all were descended of slaves, and that we were all descended of savages that were just on some small island in the west coast of Africa, um, saying these savage seances and things like that. And so it was just difficult at times for me to even believe and even picture in my mind that these people were in fact people of color, or black people. And just going back to the person that I mentioned earlier, Chronicles of Judah 144. When I first heard of the, and by the way, you should check that channel out. But
surely.
When I first heard him say that, for example, I think he stated that William Shakespeare was a black man. I was like,
Hmm? wait, wait,
okay.
wait, wait, wait. I definitely. I asked the first one. That's a first. That's
Yeah,
a first.
I've never. I don't think
When
I've
I
ever
heard
heard that
Beethoven was
before.
black, I was like, okay, it makes sense. He was a musical genius. He had to have been black. But
Right.
William
Yeah.
Shakespeare?
William Shakespeare, yes. William Shakespeare wrote a lot about the black nobility of Europe during his time and even before his time. Like, for example, as a matter of fact, the movie starring Denzel Washington by the name of The Tragedy of Macbeth. I don't know if you've seen it,
I've heard of it.
but it's a movie that depicts Macbeth, who was a Scottish lord who eventually became a Scottish ruler for about 16 or 17 years. Um, that play that the movie was based off of was, of course, written by William Shakespeare, and he wrote a lot of his plays like that, like Macbeth, and even another one by the name of Othello,
Yeah.
about a lot of the black nobility and lords who existed back then in that time period. And so a lot of William Shakespeare even was based in the history of the Aboriginal blacks of Europe. And but Shakespeare was actually called a derogatory term that blacks used to be called back in the day. I believe it was a critic, I forget his name, but it was a critic of William Shakespeare's who called him an upstart crow. And so the word crow, if you look that up as a derogatory term, was a term that was used to, like I just stated, demean people of color or black people. So that term, crow, as he called him, an upstart crow, is someone who was gaining a certain level of prominence, who was also, a person of color or somebody who was black, was actually used by somebody who lived back during the time period of Shakespeare, who was critiquing Shakespeare. So, yeah, Shakespeare was a so-called black man.
Bro, that is crazy. That is crazy, and it is crazy how much you can trace language back and see it. Like, language tells so much history. In my Black political theory class right now, our teacher talks about how he, like, damn it, I can't even remember right now, but he was basically talking about how he, like, a researcher in the past, a black researcher, he used language to he used language to reveal that philosophy originated in ancient Egypt, and that philosophy didn't even exist in ancient Greece. It didn't even exist prior to the ancient Greeks coming to Egypt and learning about it and being taught it by Egyptians. And it's crazy how the study of language, you can find as like something as small as being called, like, what is it, like an upstart crow. Yeah, being called something like that can reveal so much about history that we aren't taught. And you know damn well people, bro, I know people have called you crazy for the stuff that you research, bro. I know you've had critics, bro. I know you have, bro. Because this stuff is like, it's like hearing that Shakespeare was like, that William Shakespeare was black. You know how much we've taught. You know how much we've been taught about him. You know how many boring ass plays we had to sit through in 7th grade and 10th grade. You know, they ain't doing that for no black dude, bro. They're not, and they gonna make sure we thought he was white, bro. That's actually crazy. I'm definitely gonna have to look into that more, bro, because I think I might have heard that once, that he was black. I think I might have heard that before, maybe.
That's mind blowing because I'm a writer and I look at a lot of I've read Othello a couple of times just so I can get the nuances and see how stories should be written, because I feel like that's a really beautiful written book. I mean, not book, but play. And I would have never even thought that was written by a black man. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy just to see how many different, like, you know, there's levels to this shit. Honestly, like, first you find out Jesus is black. Then you find out that there's There's Moors, in Spain, and then you find out that prominent people were um, not just in Africa, but in Europe. Like there's emperors and lords and rulers that are black, and then you find out that some of the people who white people said were white are actually black. So it's crazy, like how deep this can really go.
Oh,
Um,
it can go super
Super
deep.
deep.
Real deep. Like
And
how
people have actually tried to state that William Shakespeare wasn't a real person at all. So I wonder why that is.
Hey, Charles, you onto something right there. You onto something right there. I mean, it's crazy when you think about it because it's so easy to just. I mean, when Shakespeare lived like 500 years ago, it's very easy to like cover it up and just say he's white because there's you can't really prove that wrong, especially now. And like, where is the Shakespeare from? He's from England, right? Like it's like you can't go back and ask those people. No, like there's no pictures of him. England, when you think of England or anywhere in Europe, you think white people, so you think, okay, white man, Macbeth, you know. So it's like, bro, that stuff is so crazy. I can only imagine what your mind was going through when you was finding this stuff, bro. Like that stuff is crazy.
It must have aged at least a good 30 years. His mind must have aged. He already know he got some grades up there somewhere.
Cause like, bro, if I was you, like, I would enter be so cynical. Like, I wouldn't want to believe anything that I see no more. Like, and I know there's probably times where you see stuff and you want to say something, but you're like, nah, let me chill. I'm not. I don't want to speak too much.
You definitely have to have a certain level of discernment when you hear people have certain topics, because not everybody is meant to be made privy to this information, and not everybody is meant to be receptive to this information. And when I say that, I don't mean that not everybody can see a lot of this information, and that everybody can't learn something from it, but not everybody is meant to accept it as the full unabashed truth.
Right.
You'll have people out there, especially so-called Caucasians, that will state that this just is not true. And then when you tell them, and when you cite sources and books and information, articles and things of that nature, they'll still take it to their grave that what you're saying is crazy, and that you're just quote unquote, one of their favorite terms is Afrocentrist. And so they'll resort to calling you an Afrocentrist and things of that nature. But one has to ask, how much research have they really done to really corroborate a lot of the statements that they're trying to make about this stuff not being true?
It's no research. It's none. Because I know people who argue with you probably learn a lot of the stuff that they know in the history, in a history book from school, or like it's no deeper level of trying to understand. Like, I know you've dedicated hours to this, hours and hours upon hours. So I like coming from your perspective. I already know it's hard to argue with people who haven't put in the same work that you've put in to know what you know. I already know that's hard. I already know. I have a question. I have another question though. On your website, what is? I feel like Michael kind of asked this already, but like, what was your most favorite thing to research that's on your website right now? What was your most favorite thing? Like on there, like what are you most proud of on your website?
Well, that's a hard question, because I'm pretty proud of all of it.
But is there any subject that you have, like, that you have a soft spot for, that really?
Like I said, the ancient Britons, or
Yeah.
the ancient Celts / ancient Iberians, is probably the most.
You said ancient Liberians?
Yeah, the Iberians.
Wow.
That's crazy.
Those are, I think they're they're the ancestors of the Moors, of the Spanish Moors. The Iberians are. So, but yeah, just researching those civilizations and finding out more and more information about those civilizations was probably the most interesting in a myriad of ways. Um, and just researching a lot of their exploits, like for example, let me think something essential, like not to make this about like like the Bible or anything, but it was just crazy to find out that the Galatians, the people who were known as the Galatians in the Bible, who Paul wrote to, were a Celtic tribe or a Celtic group of people who also descended from, of course, the Iberians, who I can go in depth in talking about what even the Iberians' origins were, that being them being the descendants of the Hebrews or the Iberians as they were called, was very very was very revelatory, and it was very very interesting for me to research. And I'd probably say that section, all the way from the section around first settlers of the British Isles on down, is those are my favorite sections that I spoke about or that I wrote on my website.
That's
That's
hard as
hard as
hell,
hell,
bro.
bro.
That's
That's
hard.
hard.
I know that, or I mean, who really knows anything? But
Bro, that's how I'm feeling after hearing them talk, bro. Like, that's how, bro. Every time I talk to somebody like you, Charles, or somebody who really knows what they're talking about, especially when it comes to ancient African history, I be really feeling like what do I know? What do I know? Like, bro, when I hear stuff like this, I think one of the best ways to reach the minds of people is through media and entertainment. I think so. Like a director needs to take charge and make a movie about these people. Like inspire pride in that type of way. I think of the same way in terms of like when it comes to like black people in America, and like there's so many movies made about our trauma and stuff like that. We need to make movies about like cities like Black Wall Street, and not focus on the racial aspect of the city being destroyed, but like the aspect of just like their daily life and the happiness, just things like that, and other like
let's even go deeper. We should make movies about Black Knights and
right
and what it
things
was
like
like
that.
damn near in South Africa before white people took over. Like we don't talk about any of that stuff, and it's really
Like
nuts to me.
we need to have that stuff to instill more racial pride and really be I'm black and I'm proud, you know what I'm saying? Like we need more of that, and be like, and people gonna be like, oh, was this real? And you gonna be like, hell yeah, this was real, this is a true story.
It's
Yeah,
crazy.
so
Oh, what you about to say?
those are definitely great. Those are great suggestions, but I'd say that kind of stuff. If you were trying to, for instance, make a movie about some of the stuff that you guys were saying, I'm of the opinion that those movies would never get made, at least not with mainstream movie productions,
Yeah,
because what that would do with that, because I don't know if you guys understand what would happen if if black people actually had this information more privy to them, and if they actually had an idea of where they were and who they were in history, it would cause such a major um, shift in our perspective of who we are, and then we would eventually stop trying to cater to a lot of these other factions that black people tend to cater to, like of course the you know Caucasian politicians and stuff like that, and just Caucasians in general. It would cause I believe that it would cause our minds to shift to such a degree that we would no longer feel compelled to want to rely on them anymore to quote unquote make us equal to them. We would wake up and realize that we need to take control of our own destiny and be our own rulership and have our own like the ancients in ancient Greece and ancient Rome and the ancient Europeans, etc. That would cause such just a drastic shift in the mindset of not just black people but everybody in America, because even from a quote unquote Caucasian person's perspective, I would think that they would be very, very just shocked. A lot of the Caucasian masters, they would be shocked to just hear a lot of this stuff that actually happened, and that were actually a lot of the things that were actually performed by black people. They would be shocked too, and they would feel a certain sense of they would feel a certain sense of not being as supreme in their view of themselves as they have been for the last, I'd say, maybe 300, 400 years or so. So that would cause such a shift in just everybody's perspective that I don't think a lot of the higher echelon powers that be in this society would want people to be privy to. That's just my opinion.
I think so too, because you look at how the political gains of American politicians are now. They give us tokens and they give us symbols of equality, quote unquote, but they never give us complete equity. And one of the things that must come when we obtain equity is the realization that we're not trying to become equal. We're trying to become separate. And that's something that a lot of black people don't want to hear. That when we separate ourselves and we detach ourselves from the melting pot society or the white supremacy or supremacy ideology, we begin to stand alone. Similar to when people describe trees. You know how there's the sequoia redwood, and then there's I forgot what the other species redwood there is. But the sequoia redwood is known for being the biggest. But if we look at this is a bad example. Let me restart that one over. If you look at how black people are comparatively to white people, these last 300 years, quote unquote, would have been prime civilization, because that's what we're living in. That's where all the technology and stuff is. But when you look at society or civilization as a whole before what we are now, you'll see that black people had a major contribution. Even now, even though it's not celebrated as much, it was more prominent back then, which is why you see a lot of writers and a lot of authors talk about this stuff. But comparatively now, we are not seen as stronger. We're not seen as strong individuals because we are being comparative. We're being comparative to what other people have to say about us. But if we really hone into who we are, similar to what Black Wall Street did, where they separated themselves without having to compare themselves to what they were doing, you'll start to see that black people they take more initiative to thrive instead of to survive when we aren't comparing ourselves no longer.
Bro, that's real shit, bro. I think that's what we. And going back to what I was saying when I was talking about the movie stuff earlier, I'm not naive. I know white people aren't gonna make those movies. Like I know that. I know that. I know they're not gonna make those movies.
I mean, shit. Look at animes like Black Sands. Like those are not big. They're not big. Not in Asia. They're not big here. You actually have to like push that in order for it to be big.
Right.
Right. I just think that when you talk about Charles, you're talking about like us doing for self. I think like the media aspect that's included in that. We need to make those. We need to make that type of stuff on our own. We need to start doing this stuff on our own because the like you said, the powers that be, like they don't want us to know this stuff. Hell no. They don't want us to come close to this. And that's why we are where we are, because they have done a great job at hiding this information from us. And we are thankful to live in an era of information to where we can find that. Charles, you talking about the YouTubers, and say his name again?
Judah.
Chronicles of Judah 144.
Chronicles of Judah. Like, if you probably wouldn't have found him if we didn't live in this age of information right now, to where you can just find people online and stuff like that. Like, there was a time period, like when you talk about the 70s and stuff like that, you had to go deep in the library to find this stuff. If it was even in your local public library, like you have to go deep, and now this information is now like it's still not easy to find, but it's a whole lot easier than how it used to be, and we need to take advantage of that as a people, because this information is here. We need to take initiative and learn our history. We need to teach our kids our history, because other cultures do that. That's what other cultures is doing. We gotta do the same thing. We gotta teach people these stories of all the great things black people have done in the extreme past, and in the present. Mike, you was talking about how like in the last 300 years, you talk about black people. We what did you say? What did you say? I don't want to get your words mixed up. You was talking.
Black people have contributed to society, but we have taken a back burner because of white supremacy.
And the thing is, I wouldn't even say that we've taken a back burner, because we created.
In our prevalence, I'm saying
No,
it's
but
not that we haven't contributed. It's not that we haven't contributed.
Right.
We've
Right.
contributed in big ways, like blood transfusion.
Charles Drew. I stayed in Drew Hall at Howard University. Yes, sir.
uh, peanuts, all the basic stuff, and then you look deeper, and some of the things that have been covered up, like the cotton gin, were invented by black men, and
Yeah, I mean every innovation, I really believe every single, maybe not every single one, but I feel like most innovations that were made in the agricultural South and in the antebellum time period, I think it was made by black people. They was the main people, and the main people doing it. The main people working on the field.
yeah, I mean, even deeper than that, like you look at like Nikola Tesla, he had black assistants.
Right.
So who's to say
Oh,
that
so not to cut you up, Michael, but so did what's his name?
Thomas
I
Edison?
think Charles Darwin.
Yeah,
Wow.
Charles Darwin, of course, was the person who came up with the theory of evolution.
and race.
He was actually encouraged by a black man by the name of John Edmonstone or John Edmonston to go, I think, to South Africa to look at a lot of the animals out there to try and go even deeper into his theory of evolution. And he actually taught Charles Darwin a lot about zoology and things like taxidermy and things like that. So a lot of that theory of evolution stuff was actually taught to Charles Darwin by a so-called black man.
Yeah.
And it's crazy because Darwin still had the audacity to call us inferior. That's crazy. Yeah, he still had the audacity, bro. Like what's up?
One has to ask themselves, because he states that humankind has evolved from an ape, right? So one has to ask themselves, who is the ape that he's referring to? Because I'm pretty sure the Caucasian knows where they come from. They know that where they descend from, and who the Aborigines were. So one has to ask themselves, who is the ape that they evolved from? Who is he really talking about, or what is he really trying to imply when he says that man, quote unquote, evolved from an ape?
Man. We gonna have to bring you on for that one. Honestly, we gonna have to have a couple sessions with you, bro.
Oh, bro, this is definitely not the last, bro. This is definitely not the last.
This is nowhere near the last one. We're just stating that now on the Black Lotus. This is part 1 of damn near talks with Charles Taylor.
I mean, is this damn? You think this is Black Anthropology or nah? Yeah, is episode 4 or 5? I don't know.
Fuck it, it's whatever episode it is. But
y'all gonna see when we release.
Yeah, I know that Joey got a kickback going on, and I gotta do a blood transfusion or something. But Charles, brother, I'm sorry that we had to cut it short, but I'm so appreciative to even have you on here. It's crazy. But yeah, man, thank you for coming on, for real. And
appreciate you coming on,
bro.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys for inviting me. Thank you for that.
Nah, of course, bro. We had to give you a platform because that the website that I was reading, it was the website you've made, bro, is a major achievement. Like, congratulations on.
Nah, for real, bro. That's big stuff, bro. That's taking action. We need more people to take action, bro. Like that's taking action.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, so the website that Jordan sent to you, that's not like the final. That's not the final product. I just released the final product. It's called just blackishistory.com. If you type those words blackishistory.com into the search bar, the URL, it will pop up. So I just recently launched it, I think 3 days ago.
Perfect.
So if you just type in Black is History into the search bar, it should pop up. So that's the final product.
Bet. Are you gonna be updating it, or is that like the final product? Like,
oh yeah, definitely. And I'm for sure going to be making other platforms like a YouTube channel, Patreon. I'm going to be on a lot of other platforms, so, and probably going to be under the same name, Black is History. So just look out for those.
We gonna be tapped in for sure. We gonna be here for the journey, bro. Like we gonna be here. We gonna be here.
Appreciate it.
Surely. But all right, this is another episode of Black.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, if you're listening to our podcast, please follow our Instagram to stay updated on whatever we're doing, our beliefs, our ideologies, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel. I know a lot of you guys might not know we have a YouTube channel if you're listening, so definitely subscribe to that, and subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, whatever platform you use. It would be much appreciated. So do that right now if you're listening, if you haven't already.
And leave a review.
Yes, sir. A review would be much appreciated. Much appreciated. Only if they're good, though. Let's be honest. Only if they're good.
No, fuck it. If it's bad, I want to know. I want to know who got beef with me. But nah, this was another episode of the Black Lotus podcast. Thank you guys for all you guys who listened. And as long as you show love, we'll stay consistent. Peace, y'all. One love.
Good job.